So the Israelites have escaped the clutches of Pharaoh and the Egyptian army. They've crossed the Red Sea and now they're in the wilderness, wandering about for a time that is about 40 years. When I was younger, my family, we've got relatives up in Northumberland, and so we would make the journey every summer from Guildford to Northumberland. It's about probably like a 6 to 7 hour journey, depending on traffic, and that is fine. But when you're like 7 or 8, when you're a young kid, that journey feels like a 40-year wilderness journey. And so we would often leave just after breakfast, and so for lunch, like, we'd have packed like sandwiches and stuff like that. And the thing is, when you're like a young kid and you're bored in the car and you're driving past all these service stations offering like McDonald's and KFC and stuff like that, you start to just lose your interest in the sandwiches that you know that you're going to have for lunch, like these ham and cheese wholemeal bread sandwiches just lose their appeal. And so we would, me, my brother and sister, we'd just complain. We'd be like, oh, why do we have sandwiches? Like, can't we have something nicer like McDonald's or KFC? And eventually one of us would need the toilet and we'd have to stop at a service station. And whilst we were in the service station, mum and dad, like, they would finally relent, they'd give in, they'd cave to all of our pressure and complaining, and we'd end up with like a McDonald's or Burger King or something like that. And something similar happens here with the Israelites in the wilderness. They're wandering about, they've, as I say, like, they've escaped the clutches of the Egyptians. It's amazing, it's a fantastic triumph. They've crossed through the River Jordan, which has like stopped still for them, and like a path has been made through the Jordan River for them. And then they get to the wilderness and they're like, we don't have anything to eat. And so they complain to Moses and Aaron, who are leading them, and essentially complain to God, and they're like, we need food. And God, he hasn't led the Israelites out of Egypt just so that they can starve in the desert. He feeds them. He gives them manna and he gives them quail. He gives them bread and fish to eat in the desert. Like our family, like when we travel up to Northumberland, we get our McDonald's. The Israelites have got their McDonald's. They've got their bread, their fish, their set. It's amazing the way that God provides for the Israelites in the desert. For 40 years, they live off the manna and quail that God provides. It's incredible. God is so generous in the way that he provides this, and it's miraculous. And the Israelites have no choice but to trust God to provide this for them. And they do. And one of the things that we read about is that God says to the Israelites, only prepare for yourself enough for one day. Don't stockpile it, don't hoard it. Trust me that I will keep on giving you enough. Trust me that I will keep on sustaining you. Trust me that I care enough for you not to let you starve in the wilderness. And if you read on, and as we read in the passage even, the Israelites do have trouble with this trusting in God. Some of them collect more than they need, and it goes rotten. And this, I think, is a real lesson that we can learn. And Jesus repeats it later in the Gospels. He teaches us to pray for our daily bread, not for our weekly bread, but give us today our daily bread, what we need from God for each day. And he says, don't worry about how you'll be fed in the future, because today has got enough worries of its own. And so the lesson that we can learn from this is God is an amazing, generous God who will liberate us from what is holding us captive, and he won't just leave us there to starve. He'll continue to provide for us, he'll continue to care for us. But there's also, on our part, that trust that's required. That trust that God will continue to care for us. God will continue to look after us. Even when it doesn't seem like it, even when it feels like we're in the wilderness, a desert place, even when it feels like we've been brought out by God to die, God cares for us. God will give us our bread and fish, whatever that might be.